Quick backstory, I've had a stalker for about 4 years. He was never aggressive or sent me proper threats. So, stubborn as I am, I did my best to ignore him and not give him the satisfaction of showing him any fear, to be honest. After a while, I also wasn't scared anymore since he almost never came close to me. I know being stalked can affect people severely even in a case like mine. And that's totally valid, but I guess I just got lucky and was never really psychologically affected by it. His stalking behavior mostly just consisted of sending me letters and gifts such as photos of my own apartment building from the outside, things he dug out of my trash can, and so on. I called the police many times, but they weren't able to or really didn't try to catch or identify him. About 3 weeks ago I discovered the German version of r/IAMA and thought that people might want to know about what it's like to have a stalker, since I barely use any social media aside from Reddit and have no personally identifying information here. I didn't think he'd ever see it. One person even asked, does he know you're putting him on blast on Reddit? And I answered maybe. Maybe it would make him angry, maybe he would be turned on. Don't know, don't care. Well, I know the real answer now. He did see it, and he did not like it. Like I said, he was never aggressive and never came close to me. The closest I know of was when he sent me a picture of myself unlocking my apartment door, taken from the corner of the steps above. Sorry if that makes no sense. I don't know how else to explain it, but I consider myself a pretty vigilant person, and I'm thinking that he might have hid a camera there instead of being there to take the photo himself. I think I would have noticed him if he did. I don't know how he got wind of the subreddit, but he did. The next week was quiet, no letters, and I didn't see him anywhere. Then he left me letters with printed out questions and my answers from the subreddit. He also left me a long, hateful letter towards my boyfriend about an issue I had posted on the German version of the subreddit. His letters were never hateful like that before, though he never seemed happy with my boyfriend. He wrote about how I should share the spotlight with him since I got so much attention thanks to him. A few days later I got a gift, but this time he didn't leave it in my mailbox or at my car like he usually did. No, this time he left it inside the apartment building right in front of my door. I didn't take it inside my apartment but opened it outside. It was a pretty big box, which was also unusual, and it was taped shut. As I'm typing it out I realize that wasn't a good idea at all and could have ended badly for me, but luckily he didn't send me a bomb or anything. He did, however, send me several zip ties, a roll of tape the kind you use to tape off walls when painting, nothing you could use to restrain someone, a TV remote with most buttons picked off, a pack of band-aids with a few used ones not actually, just made to look that way according to the police, and a framed picture of me. I could tell the picture was taken a few days ago, and my boyfriend was next to me but cut out of the photo. The frame was shattered, and the package was full of glass shards, clearly more than just what could have fallen out of the frame, and they were also intentionally put inside the crumbled newspaper that was stuffed in there to keep it all in place. I called the police right away and gave it to them. They were more concerned this time finally, thanks, and told me they'd send patrol cars more frequently. He didn't show up or leave me any letters or gifts for about another week and a half. But 8 days ago it started again. I found letters in my mailbox where he wrote about how he wasted his time on me, how I haven't been appreciating his effort, how he was wrong about me being special. 5 days ago I left my apartment in the morning and heard a crunch sound as I stepped on my doormat. He put broken glass under it in the night. I went off to work because I was in a hurry and was just going to make my boyfriend call the police. But then I found my car had also been vandalized. The sides were scratched, lights smashed, and the windshield had a phrase painted on. "It's time soon," followed by my last name, along with some German phrase painted onto the car. I went back inside and called the cops myself. They found the same phrase on a note under the doormat. This time they really took me seriously, which might have been because I was just pissed at this point, which I made very clear. If for some reason you're like me and just too stubborn to be afraid of a stalker like mine, then all of this, the letters, gifts, photos, even the damn glass under my doormat, are just really annoying. But my car was useless to me now, and the threat scared even me. I did, however, have a dashcam in my car, and it caught everything. The police took the footage as evidence even though the dashcam footage wasn't of high quality, and I had given them photos of him that were just as good before, but they said it's not sufficient. And they told me they'll look into it further and promised to send more patrol cars again. Then it was quiet for 2 more days, until 2 days ago, someone rang the doorbell at just after 4 a.m., my boyfriend, and I got up, but we were both hesitant. But I saw blue lights outside, and just as I got up I heard them shouting, "This is the police. Please open the door." They told us they were called by one of our downstairs neighbors who came home from his night shift about an hour early and heard someone else enter the building after them before the door fell shut. My neighbors know of my situation, and I've asked them to make sure they don't let strangers into the building. This neighbor then went into his own apartment and looked through the peephole. We have motion activated lights in the stairway, so he waited to see if they turned back on. They did. Then he saw a middle-aged man walk upstairs. Above this neighbor are only me and my boyfriend, and a single mom with 3 kids who probably won't be getting any visitors at 3 a.m., so he called the police. They came and found my stalker 1/2 floor above me on the stairs. He should have been able to see the cop cars since there's a little window up there, and they had their lights on, but he either missed them or wanted to get caught. They found a pocket knife on him, and he confessed to being my stalker right away. He's finally caught. They got him. It took 4 years, a provocative Reddit post, and one very vigilant and caring neighbor, but he's finally done. For now at least, he's facing several charges, and I've collected every single piece of evidence over the past 4 years. I don't know what kind of outcome I can expect, but for now I finally got some peace. America Online was a big thing when I was 13, or in other words for my generation AIM, which stood for, you guessed it, AOL Instant Messenger. It was around 2002, and I would have been a fresh 13. And in 8th grade, I had many times went into chat rooms by myself or with friends goofing around. Unfortunately, unsolicited photos were a thing then too, but usually you could stay clear of it by the chat room you entered. I didn't have any photos of myself, and back when you had to take a digital photo and upload it from your camera, plus I was 13 and self-conscious, which I'm sure anyone can relate with. But one day a guy popped up on my screen wanting to chat. It went fine at first. I was very naive back then, and we quickly fell into a pattern of talking. His name was Dave and lived in California. Eventually him telling me he loved me. But the problem was he was 19. Now I wasn't proud of this, but at first at 13, I just sent pictures of some random girl and said it was me. He instantly fell for me, telling me age is just a number and how mature I was. Now at this point he did not live in state, so there was never any chance of us meeting. Eventually he told me he and his mom were moving up to a city that was about an hour and half away from me. He started begging me to see him and go to a movie, anything. I had to break the catfishing truth and say those were not pictures of me but of someone else. He was furious. He had been looking forward to a different type of child this whole time. Dave forgave me a few days later, saying, "I still want to meet you because I love you." All the things you say to a young girl to get her to swoon. I think back and I'm like, wow, I was 13. So I told my best friend everything I just explained above, and that I wanted her to go with me to meet him. There was a whole plan about him driving to see me and going to the movies to finally meet what I thought was the love of my life. I had been brainwashed into believing this was normal. I didn't tell my mom, of course, and honestly she didn't notice any of it. She's never been too involved, if you catch my drift. So the day my friend and I were going to meet up with Dave, her mom came and picked us up from school. She said something that made my stomach drop into nothingness. She said, "Chrissy, you are not going to the movies. You are not going to meet that man. You are going to get seriously hurt or kidnapped, and I can't allow you guys to go." I cried and cried because I honestly thought I could handle everything and be fine. She told me she wasn't going to tell my mom. I had to promise to never speak to him again and never plan to meet a stranger online. He ended up showing up and was upset I wasn't there. He went on aim flying off the handle like I hadn't seen at that age. It scared me. It scared me how close I was to this man being near me. I never talked to Dave again, but I easily believe I would have been kidnapped. Or worse that day if my best friend's mom hadn't stepped in. My mom would have been none the wiser. I was none the wiser, but I am here today and learned a dire lesson. Nobody is what they seem, and make sure to keep your kids close. This happened several years ago. I was home alone one evening when I heard a knock at the back door. This confused me, as no one ever used that door. My husband and I lived in a fourplex at the time, and all of the units had a back door at the top of a narrow staircase. These doors were a little inconvenient to access, as you'd have to go around the building and up the narrow stairs, as opposed to the wider main entrance at the front. It didn't make sense to use the back entrance, and I couldn't think of anyone who would go to that door to visit. As I approached the back door, I saw two tall men in the window, standing at the door. A chill went down my spine. I did not feel safe opening the door, so I called out, "Hello." One of the men tapped on the window. "Yes, hello. May we come in? We are with Bresnan." At the time, my husband and I had Bresnan for cable but did not have any issues with it. I replied, "We're not having any issues with Bresnan. Is there a problem?" "Ma'am," the man said, "can we come in? We're servicing the area, and it's important we look at your cable." I shook my head. "We're not having any issues," I repeated, "so there's no need to stop by." "Ma'am, we are visiting every resident. Let us in so we can do our job." I noticed the man grab the doorknob and try to open the locked door. I slowly grabbed a knife from our knife block and held it at my chest. "We're not having any issues," I repeated, trying not to convey shakiness of my voice. "So you don't need to be here." The two figures appeared to shuffle and then straighten. "Ma'am, let us in. We're on a deadline and need to do our job." I glanced at the clock, gauging when my husband would arrive home from work. I gripped the knife tighter. "Ma'am," I saw him try the doorknob again. I closed my eyes and felt overwhelming gratitude of always locking my doors. Just then, a thought came to the forefront of my mind. "I'm sorry I can't help you. Could I please get your names and badge numbers? I can give your supervisor a call to let them know our cable is fine." I heard another shuffle, and one of the men replied, "No need to, ma'am. We're sorry we wasted your time." With that, both of the men exited the staircase and disappeared into the night. Shaken up, I held the knife tight and tried to get my bearings. I remember making a mental note to call the cable company or the police, but my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold my phone, with the knife still grasped to my chest and the phone falling out of my other hand. I sank to the floor and cried. When my husband returned home, I told him what had happened. I was still very shaken up and had started crying again after he came home. He immediately called the Bresnan Cable Company and spoke to a representative who informed us that no one from their company was out on assignment in our area. The next day, we asked our neighbors if they had a visit from the company. No one had, so to the two creepy men who tried to break into my home under the guise of cable repair, let's not meet. Hi, this only happened a few hours ago, so I'm shaken, but it's too early in the morning to phone and wake up friends, and I needed to talk to someone and get this out. I'm so creeped out and concerned, so I thought of coming here. Brief setting and context. I'm a woman in my 30s, caring for my elderly parents, so staying in a downstairs room in my childhood home at the moment. The window faces the main street, which is an average residential street in a fairly quiet area. The bed faces the window. I often leave the window open at night since I need it to be cool to sleep, and I haven't really worried about it since there's a cabinet with an aquarium in front of the window, not blocking the window from view, and I can reach to open and close it, but it would make it difficult for someone to climb in. My dog, Sable, also always sleeps in the room with me. While she's a sweet-natured, medium-sized dog who doesn't look the least bit threatening, she's a fantastic guard dog in that she's always alert to any noises and will stand her ground and bark and growl if she senses a threat. So I've never really worried about the open window. After tonight, I won't be able to do it again. It started at maybe 3:30 or 4 a.m. sometime. I was awake. Since I care for my parents, I often have disrupted sleep patterns, and I'm awake at odd hours. I was reading a book and heard Sable growl, low and deep. Then she jumped off the bed and began pacing a bit, looking up at the window, before jumping up at the cabinet by the window, barking. I shouted, "Hey, we're calling the police, dog will bite," just in case there was someone there, and went to look out of the curtains to the side. I didn't see anything. I pulled the curtains closed again and made sure to pull the right curtain over, then drew the left side curtain, the one that covers the open part of the window, all the way over, covering the right side curtain too, tucking it down so any wind wouldn't be able to move it. I wasn't really alarmed then. It's a fairly quiet residential street, but there are foxes around that we sometimes hear, and occasionally someone passing by or the neighbor's gate next door will make Sable react. But she doesn't usually react the way she did this time. She'll usually growl, but stay on the bed, and her reaction was much stronger than normal. I thought that even if it was someone scoping out the open window to potentially burgle, they'd seen now that the room was occupied by a person and dog, and would go find an easier target. But mainly I guessed it was just a random noise she'd heard outside. I was wrong. It was a good half hour or more later, after I've relaxed and thought I might doze off soon, that I heard her growl again, a really serious, deep and low growl, and I listened again, thinking it might be foxes or something, but I heard what sounded like deep, horror movie breathing noises, like the heavy breathing sounds a pervert makes down the phone to his stalking victim in a film. I sat up, looked up at the window, and my heart stopped. The curtain had been pulled back and lifted at the bottom, like someone peeking under it, and I could still hear the heavy breathing. I shouted, "Hey," again and moved from the bed to the side of the window so I could see past the curtain, and saw the figure of a man move away from the window to the right, towards the front door and the exit of the front garden. Too dark to make out features or clothing, it was just a dark male figure. Shaking, I immediately thought that since I knew he'd moved away and wasn't at or under the window, I reached and pulled it shut, grabbed my phone and called the emergency services. One thing that creeps me out, in hindsight, is that it would have taken a few seconds for me to move from the bed to the side of the window, and that was after I'd shouted and he knew he'd been seen. But he must have stayed there even knowing I'd seen him, until I moved the curtain and could see out. Then he moved away. The heavy breathing also had to be deliberate. It was so loud, like someone trying to frighten me. While on the phone with police, I went around the ground floor of the house turning lights on, making sure the rest of the house was still secure, and it was. Very careful to lock doors and all the other windows at night. And everything looked undisturbed. 2 patrol officers came shortly before 5 a.m. and took the report. They suggested asking the neighbors if they have camera footage, and to let them know of a potential prowler in the area tomorrow, and they went to drive around the area, saying that they'd be wanting to know what someone was doing wandering around at 5 a.m. the time the police arrived anyway. Since the dark meant I only saw the shape of a person, no real description, I doubt they can do much. I couldn't even be 100% certain it was a man. But the breathing and the figure I saw instantly made me think male. The outline of his head looked smooth, so either bald or wearing a tight cap, and height would have been average, 5'8" or 5'10". I'm still shaken, but feeling angry and violated, and wishing we had a camera system now. We'll be looking into that. I never thought anything like that would happen. Don't have any enemies, no recent exes, no one I know of harboring any grudges. Since I'm caring for my folks full time now, I'm not out socializing or making any enemies, nor are my elderly and disabled parents. I'm at the wrong side of 35 and living in jeans or joggers and t-shirts, no makeup or fussing with hair most of the time, so not a likely target for a peeping Tom pervert. If it wasn't for the fact that it was my dog who alerted me to something both times, I'd wonder whether I was half asleep and dreamed it, that I'd imagined it. I have had hallucinations once as the result of a bad reaction to an antidepressant, but that was more than a decade ago, hasn't happened before or since, and I learned how to test my reality in times I was worried about whether something really happened or not from a psychologist. When I asked how I could ever trust my own senses again after that reaction to the meds, they said that to be sure something was real, to see if other people can see or hear the thing too, or if it's a noise or voice outside. Can I see someone or something that explains the noise? If so, it's not likely to be a hallucination if both oral and visual perceptions match up. The dog sensed someone there first, and I heard and then saw someone. I wasn't dreaming or imagining it. I don't use drugs and almost never drink. I'm scientifically minded and don't believe in ghosts. And while I love a good horror film, I'm rarely freaked out by them anymore, too old and cynical. I have to think it was someone who was looking to burgle a house, but for the fact that they came back so much later, maybe someone on drugs or having a mental health episode, or, and this one bothers me most, someone who wanted to scare me. But why? Who? They know where we live. Are they going to come back? New fears keep popping into my mind. Like most nights, I'm up at some point late at night or in the very early hours, and will let the dog outside into the back garden for a quick pee. And I'm suddenly aware of how easy it would to be attacked and gain entry then. There's a passage around the side of the house to go from the front to the back garden with only a small side gate, meant to keep the dog confined, not designed to keep others out. It would be easy for someone to access, then hide against the back of the house, completely hidden from view. They were bold enough to come back a second time, even knowing a person and a dog were in the room, perhaps hoping I would have fallen asleep by then. They seemed to be trying to really scare me when they returned the second time, doing that deep breathing noise, and stayed by the window even after I'd shouted. In those few seconds it would have taken from me shouting out until I reached the window and could move the curtains and see out. They could have moved and been long out of sight, but they'd stayed there until there was a chance I could see them, only then moving away. The breathing noises, and then the coldness then ran through me when I actually saw a man moving away from the window will haunt me, along with the question of their motives. Were they trying to scare me? Why? What's to stop them from coming back?